Boz, Milky Way, the review. Listening to this album, you would think that a dude born in Paris, France would have a little bit more rhythmic or enticing musically. Boz doesn't really take that approach. He's a simpler individual. I guess I should give you a little bit of my backstory or experience with Boz. I've always enjoyed his music from a distance, meaning I never really got into the music and felt like I was getting something that I could strongly relate to. Of course, the things that Boz is talking about in this album, as well as his last record, I have experienced to some degree, but to say that it's intrigued me enough for me to come back and revisit these projects, I can't say I have. So I had a little bit of fear in my mind going into Milky Way because of how I handled Boz's last record, Too High to RlOT. I did enjoy that project, and there are a lot more highlights on that project, in my opinion, than there are on this one. Only difference with this project is it seems to be a conscious effort or attempt at a more laid-back, chill environment musically than Too High to RlOT. Low-key features, some high-key features like Jermaine Cole and A AP Ferg. And this album, to me, doesn't necessarily have a concept. I just think it sets a tone, sets a mood. Too High to RlOT was a little bit more on the harder side, but Boz apparently on this record, even on his single with J. Cole, Tribe, says I'm done with all that hard acting shit. So I guess there's really not necessarily a need for it on Milky Way. And if this chair squeaks one more time, I swear to God. Now, don't get me wrong. I do like this chill vibe because the minute Icarus got started, I was like, wow, this sounds beautiful. We get some nice instrumental. We get something soulful, something kind of vibey. We get Ari Lennox coming in, who I believe is also signed to J. Cole. And Boz comes in this bitch rapping harder than ever. Very strong start, which is also another reference to, I guess, Boz going into these uncharted territories, I guess you could say. There's also a final track on here which kind of hints that they may be leaving Earth or maybe going on this long trip or something like that. There's clear references to spaceships and rockets. I mean, even on the album cover, we have Boz in this Egyptian-like setting. I don't know the actual location, but it hints at astrology to some degree, which again hints at the space theme or the trip theme. Don't know if that's really what he was going for because lyrically this album doesn't really stay connected. Looking at this album independent from whatever theme or concept may be going on, I do think a lot of them on their own could be enjoyable. I don't really think I would return to this album for the most part listening to every track because I do think Boz for the most part doesn't have as much lyrical depth here as I was expecting or wanted from him. I again listened to Too High to RlOT, and one of my main issues with that album was just the lack of focus or really like the lack of overall poignance when it came to who Boz was as an artist. It felt like he was just another guy coming in rapping about the same thing everybody else was, just trying to prove himself. And as many people want to claim that there aren't many rappers rapping about their come up and rapping about that real shit, there are. Boz came off to me on that record like, you know, and anybody else, which is generally my issue with J. Cole and his signees. It always seems like whenever he signs a new artist, it's like one of his homeboys he's trying to put on. Because they rap in very similar ways. J. Cole, too. They all come off like mini J. Coles with the exception of Earth Gang and Jid. And Boz and Kaz on some of their records. But for the most part, it just seems like they're one of the homies. Front Dusk, though, is probably my favorite track on this album because Boz is talking about giving a woman freedom, which, you know, in many rap songs, I don't really hear that being a sentiment. Like, he's saying in this song that he doesn't really care if she checks in. She doesn't need to verify anything with him. We're not in a relationship. You can do what you want. I knew you come back. I think the song is great. I love the instrumental. I like the way Boz does this sing rap type of thing with his voice. There are moments in the song and breaks in the song where Boz goes into a different flow entirely and then comes back to the bass drop. I love it. One of the few songs about a woman that I don't just think is completely corny, that gives her freedom and makes Boz look like a dude that's not pressed for pussy. Then we get to Tribe that features J. Cole, which I don't mind this track. It's jazzy. It's got this guitar in the background. Very simple la 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 from J. Cole during the hook. It's not bad. It's simple. I guess that's the thing that may turn anybody off, but I guess the simplicity to me is enjoyable. It makes it a little bit more replayable, more organic. There are some bass drops in this song, but like I said, it's so simple. Next track with A AP Ferg, I like because A AP Ferg always has this cool, funny, janky kind of delivery. I like his references and the way he talks about everything. I just think Ferg is one of those artists that can get away with a lot. Then at about the last minute and 20 seconds of this track, all you do is dance. I love this. The end of this track, all I do is dance to. I'm not with you. Baby, we know just what we got. I got this chick on the phone talking my life and I just ain't right for her. I've been in Barack Obama special is kind of like Boz's experience in America. He kind of reminds you that J. Cole isn't the only one that has issues with his neighbors. Purge is a clear example of the trap inspiration on this album, but tackling it in a jazzy, kind of soulful, melodic way. I think melody is a big part of what's missing from trap music in general. And I think Boz tries to bring that in. It doesn't necessarily appear with his voice all the time, and it doesn't make the tracks very memorable, but I do see the effort put in to try to take it to another level. And a lot of these tracks aren't necessarily radio attempts. I can see that Boz is going for, like I said, the melodic effect, but it's not to the point where he's sacrificing the native quality of these tracks to try to get a radio hit or try to make something appealing to the masses. It's kind of like if you like Boz, you like him, and he's like, if you don't, you don't. On tracks like Infiniti and Great Ones, we get references to New York movies like A Bronx Tale and White Men Can't Jump, which add to the idea that this could be Boz talking about the romantic element, because from the White Men Can't Jump movie, there is a scene romantically that takes place that Boz decides to put in the album. So I don't know if this is referencing romance or if it's just referencing New York culture. I think it's probably the former. And Designer is another track where he references a bunch of designer shit, from the artist to buying designer clothes. Look, there's nothing wrong with an artist being comfortable or confident in the type of music that they make. Clearly, Boz has a sound and he wants to continue with it. I don't think it makes for the most interesting or music that has the most replay value. While I do give Boz credit for the idea that he changed up the narrative or the direction from his last album, Too High to RlOT, I do enjoy this album a little bit more from the standpoint of an artist who's delivering a new piece or a new aesthetic, I guess you could say. The only problem, like I said, with me is just he doesn't necessarily seem to steer it in the right direction. There doesn't really appear to be a direction. There are still a lot of lines from Boz that don't really mean anything to this album. Again, the aesthetic, the atmosphere of this album is different than the last one, but the content and what Boz raps about isn't that far apart. The album just feels like Boz put on new clothes without taking a shower. I can get down with most of what Boz is doing on this record. I just don't think there's enough for me to come back to. I mean, the singing isn't amazing. When he does get into a different vocal tone, it's really flat with the delivery. The features that he does have here, although good for the moment and good for those songs, isn't very memorable. They don't hold a very high spot in my mind. And for the most part, Boz tends to limit himself to just a few topics. If there is a theme to this album, and the theme happens to be going off on a trip, I think the engine of whatever vehicle that you're riding in just stalls. Boz has a handful of beats on this album that he could do something with, but tackles in a very generic way. I do think Boz is a good rapper, but doesn't really push himself to go outside of his comfort zone. And if he does, we get the singing tracks, and while I do enjoy some of the tracks, I do feel like most of them could be enjoyed outside of the album experience. I would actually prefer to listen to them outside of the context of the album, because most of the content on this album doesn't mean much. Boz, Milky Way, I'd recommend it if you really, really love Boz. You're not getting that much different than from what was on the last record in terms of what Boz can bring to the table artistically. But if you want a new aesthetic, try this. If you've always found Boz to be pretty boring or lackluster, or you've never really liked Dreamville artists like this, I wouldn't touch this one. And Shawn C, if you enjoyed this album, let me know why in the comment section down below. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section down below. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and don't if you didn't, I guess. Just my opinion. Feel free to enjoy it if you do. All right, I'm out. Yeah, I think I'm gone. Ending videos isn't my specialty, so just go. Leave, please. Don't watch this. Like, leave. All right, you can go now. Seriously, I'm serious. Like, stop. Either you gonna leave or I'm not gonna end the video. So one of the two.